I'm here in one of my favorite spots called Mittenegge Park, and bearing witness to spring coming in. Maybe not as fast as I would like it to come in, and certainly not as fast as those robins there, if you can see them. I am not sure you can, but we can try. There you go. You see all of those robins? Those are the American robin, and they are there on the grass because that's where they get earthworms from. And they eat literally their body weight in earthworms every day. So the more grass you have, the more earthworms potential you can have, and therefore I'm sure they agree with me that spring is taking its own sweet time to come, and we wish it came earlier. Having said that, alhamdulillah, you see the beauty of this. You see that tree there, which is an oak, and you see the buds on it. Those red things are all buds, and I'll try and get you a close up of that later on in this podcast. The reason that's important is because it shows us that the most important thing as far as plants are concerned, also animals for that matter, is reproduction and propagation of the species. And they will do whatever they can do to ensure that they and their kind remain viable, which means that they produce enough of their kind. Those are the buds on the oak. The picture is not the greatest because of the distance, but anyway. So that's what's going on now. It's spring and it's coming up. I want to talk to you today about something which I very strongly believe in, and something which I have written about in multiple places. One of the places in which I have written about that with great emphasis, I hope enough emphasis for people to change their way of thinking, is in my book, The Business of Family Business. And that is about the benefit of pain. The benefit of pain. I'm not talking obviously about cruelty. I'm not talking about giving pain to somebody. I'm talking about using pain and recognizing pain for what it is. Pain is a feedback mechanism. Pain is feedback. Pain is your body, your circumstances, your life, your friends, your relationships, telling you something. And they're giving you some very, very important feedback. Now, how you deal with that pain will determine whether you succeed in life or you fail. Most people like to run away from pain. They don't like pain. Nobody likes pain. Anyone who says that, I like adverse feedback, for example. You hear this statement from some people. That's a lie. Nobody likes adverse feedback. You accept adverse feedback because you recognize its value. Which brings me to the point of the pain, which is that for something to have value, you don't need to like it. You do not need to like it. You can hate it, right? But the question is, are you just going to hate it and run away from it? Or are you going to hate it and say, I will make sure that this experience that I'm having just now is never, ever repeated in my life? Which one? And that choice determines whether in your life you are a winner or a loser. Because winners are those, everybody has pain. Everyone suffers failure. There is nobody on the face of the planet, living or who lived, who did not suffer some form of failure at some point in their life. Nobody, no exceptions. Every good person, every bad person, every prophet, every shaitan, everyone, they all suffered failure at some point in their lives. And if I want to restate that, I would say that every winner, not just every person, every winner, and there's a reason I'm saying that, which I'll come to in a bit, every winner on the planet is somebody who suffered failure. So if you combine the two, you say every person, every human suffers failure. That is true. And then you say every winner. Then that brings us to the issue of saying, well, what is it about how winners, within quotes, suffer failure and losers suffer failure? Winners use failure or the pain that comes from failure as feedback. They use that to improve themselves. They use that to change their strategy. They use that to rethink their approach to something. Whereas losers, they cry, they moan, they groan, they complain, they change nothing, and then they have a life which is a failure after failure after failure until they perish. That's the difference. Pain is feedback, and the beauty of feedback is that feedback is like a reflection in the mirror. That's the best way I have of describing feedback. It's a reflection in the mirror. It's telling you what you look like. Now, whether you choose to remain that way or you decide that I think I need to change, that decision is on you. Feedback, like your reflection in the mirror, doesn't force you to change. You decide to change if you see value in that. So, winners are those who decide that they will use pain as feedback and listen to that feedback, learn from that feedback, and ensure that they make changes which will prevent them and protect them from having that negative, painful experience again. So it's not whether you make a mistake or not. If you don't make a mistake, you learn nothing. But if you make the same mistake twice, you have learned nothing. Right? So keep that in mind. Now, therefore, pain is a very important thing. The big mistake that people do is that they try to build walls to prevent pain from happening. We do that in several ways. One is we do that with the kind of friends we choose. And consciously and unconsciously, we choose friends who agree with us on all counts. People who believe the same things we do, people who eat the kind of food we eat, who look like us, walk like us, talk like us, from our culture. Just think about all the clubs, expat clubs that are there in different foreign countries. You had in the British colonial times, and even much later, you had the English clubs. They're called English clubs in India. And they used to have signs on that saying Indians and dogs not allowed. So you are saying to yourself that the only people worth being and hanging out with and being around are people like myself. Before you start hating the British for that, I mean, there are many other much better reasons to hate them. That's a different issue. But also remember that if you go in the Middle East, for example, you have Malayali clubs and Tamil clubs and Telugu clubs and Hyderabad Association and so on and so on. All restricted to membership from people like us. Now that is called living in an echo chamber where you hear only your voice. You don't hear a contrary opinion. You don't hear a dissenting voice. You don't get any pushback to whatever you might be saying, no matter how idiotic what you are saying might be, people agree with you because there is a tacit agreement between the people to say that if I agree with you, you agree with me, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and we can all live happily ever after, except that the last part, we can live happily ever after, is not true. What is true is we can all become happily extinct and remain extinct ever after. That's the choice. So that's the one way in which we prevent ourselves, or we think we prevent ourselves from feeling the pain. Yes, we prevent ourselves from feeling the pain, but you can't wish away the consequences of that, which are very severe. The second way we think we do with pain is, and this is what I've written about in my book, The Business of Family Business. This is particularly visible in business families, but it's also true in with almost anyone who is living their life without thinking. And that is that parents, so business owners, let me take that same analogy, business founders, almost without exception, unless the business founder came into wealth from his inherited wealth, every business founder, every founder of every empire, every founder of almost anything goes through a period of severe testing. He goes through a period of pain, of deprivation, and the range differs. When I set up my consulting company in 1994, full-time, I've been doing consulting from 83 to 94 part-time. But 94 in Bangalore, my wife and I moved there, and because that's where all the multinationals were, and that's when I got, thanks to my very dear friend Pratik Roy, I got introduction into GE's training system, and so we set up shop in Bangalore. Now, 1 year, 12 months, and I am saying 12 months now with hindsight. At that time I didn't know that it would be 12 months. 1 year in Bangalore, literally we had a hand-to-mouth existence. Hand-to-mouth. There were several times in that year we lived in an apartment very near the Cantonment railway station. Nice 2-bedroom apartment. The rent of that was 7,000 rupees. There were several months that I did not have 7,000 rupees to my name. I'm talking about my net worth was less than 7,000 rupees. Now remember, rent was not the only expense. Obviously, we paid for utilities, we paid for telephones, we paid for had a small little Maruti car, so we paid for the car, we paid for the gas, we paid for food. And we didn't have anything called medical insurance. And alhamdulillah, we didn't get sick. But if you got sick, we paid for the medicine. So everything we paid for. The joy of being an entrepreneur is that you have the liberty to starve, should you so wish. So this is what we did. And there were several months when we didn't have 7,000 rupees to our name. And but alhamdulillah, Allah is kind, He accepts our supplications and du'as, and we never ever defaulted on the rental payment. We always paid, and we always paid on time. But I cannot even describe for you now. I'm talking about 1994 when we set up shop. Today I'm in 2025. Count the number of years. To this day, my heart flutters when I think about the kind of anxiety and the kind of fear that I went through. Because to me, it was not a question of saying the landlord would kick us out of the house. Maybe he wouldn't. He was a very nice man. And I think if I went and begged and pleaded with him and told him, this is my estate and can you allow us some time to pay, I'm sure he would have agreed and he would have allowed us the time. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put myself in a position where I'm begging somebody to say, can I please stay? Don't take the roof off over my head. So what do you do? But alhamdulillah, as I said, I never had to do that. But I'm talking about this pain. Now, similarly, other pains. Will I get business or not? I'm investing in something. Will I get a return or not? And you take it. The point is that when business owners, when they do good, and when they are now in a position where they say, all right, I have built a business, I have a very good business, money is no longer the issue, I have enough money literally to do whatever I want, travel anywhere, buy anything, live in any style I want. Almost the first thing, and I've heard this from business owners with tears in their eyes and saying, I made a promise to myself that I will never allow my children to face what I faced. I will never allow my children to face what I faced. And this person, I can see, he's glowing from inside. He's feeling so proud that he's such a good father. He's feeling so good about himself. So obviously I'm a great enemy of people feeling good about themselves. In my role of mentor, what I do with them is I say to them, wonderful stories, because this statement would come after some real live stories of how they started their business and all the difficulties they faced and so on. And I love listening to those stories. They are the most inspiring things in the world. I've got a stock of those stories. So I listen to the stories. And then I said to him, do me a favor. Restate. I'm going to give you a script. What you just said to me. I will never allow my children to face what I faced. Right? You said that. He said, yeah, absolutely. I'll never allow my children to face what I faced. So I said to them, okay, now, I want you to change that wording. I'll give you a script. Say it the way I'm saying it. Now I say, repeat after me. I will never. And he's saying, I will never. I said, put some feeling into that. I will never, right? Makes it never. Don't say never. I say never, right? Put some feeling into that. I say, I will never allow my children to have courage. I will never allow my children to have fortitude. I will never allow my children to have grit. I will never allow my children to understand the power of perseverance. I will never allow my children to understand the power of patience. Now, of course, he's gone silent long before this. And he's looking at me with absolutely incredulous, expression on his face. For some of them, penny drops quickly and they realize what I'm trying to do. For some others, penny drops a little bit later. So initially, they even go through some period of feeling, getting irritated with me and getting angry with me. But they realize very, very quickly what I'm saying. I'm saying to them that the reason you succeeded, the root of it, the soul of your success is the pain you went through, right? No pain, no gain. I used to go to a gym called Talwalkar's in Hyderabad. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it had a poster, huge floor-to-ceiling poster with this massive guy there. And there was a tagline which says, shut up and train. Shut up and train. And that's what it is, right? Shut up and train. So here you are, and you got this opportunity to feel this pain, and you had the sense to understand that, and to take that pain as feedback, and to learn from that. And you succeeded, and that therefore is your biggest asset. Your biggest asset is not the pain itself, but the ability to learn from that pain which you did so wonderfully well, and you want to take that away from your children. Now, how stupid is that? Right? How stupid is that? So I say to them, you look like an intelligent guy. I mean, you didn't make all this money, you didn't build this business by being stupid. You did that by being intelligent. So what happened to that intelligence? Invariably, I get this answer, what, I never thought of it like that. I say, yeah, you never thought of it like that, and so don't feel bad about it, but now start thinking like that. Do not deprive your children of the biggest asset that you can ever give them. Much more than money and education, and by education I mean formal university education and so forth, which is rapidly becoming redundant. But the point is that the real education of what do I do with pain, how do I leverage pain, how do I take pain which appears to be a liability and a problem and convert it into being the biggest and the most powerful asset that I will ever have. How can I do that? Right? Now, you're depriving them of that. So my submission to you is, think about pain differently. Pain is feedback. Pain is the best thing that can happen to you. And your success depends on what you do with that pain. Let me close with a snippet from history. In ancient Europe and Africa, we're talking now about 500 BC, about that time period, there were two major empires. There was the Roman Republic in Italy, and on the African continent there was Carthage. Carthage was an empire, and the Carthaginians, the most famous of them, which I'm sure all of you have heard, his name is Hannibal. Hannibal is the man who, these were Africans, these were black people. They built a phenomenal civilization, fantastic city, very highly developed, and they were the sworn enemies of the Romans. And Hannibal was the man who almost destroyed Rome until he was defeated in what is called the Second Punic War. And we'll come to that in due course of how that happened, who won and why they won, and so on and so on and so on. But meanwhile, let me stick with the sea. There you go again, flowers. This is just spring, hasn't even started yet, so see how beautiful that is. So now this war is going on, the Punic War. This was the longest war, and this before the Europeans started fighting. The British and French beat that by a long shot. But until then, this was the longest war. This war lasted for 23 years. The war between Rome and Carthage. There were three big wars in that war. First, second, and third Punic Wars. Now, what happened at that time was that Rome was a land power. Carthage was a naval power. The Carthaginians were coastal people, they were seafaring people, and so they ruled the seas. The Romans were, the Roman legions and so on, they were land-based. So there was a stalemate. They were in Sicily, and they were stuck. The Romans couldn't get to Carthage, they couldn't do anything because they didn't know how to use the sea. They had no ships. And then something happened. What happened was that, so think about this, Romans are suffering the pain of saying, what can we do? How can we beat this? Now, then what happened was that there was a storm. And in that storm, one of the Carthaginian ships got blown into a Roman port. So here the Romans now have a Carthaginian ship in their hands. What do you think they did? What do you think most people would do if you got your hands on this ship which belongs to these people you hate their guts, and you got this whole ship and you got a shipload of sailors? What would you do? Most people would probably slaughter the sailors, have a lot of fun doing that slaughter. It wouldn't be fast. You would torture them and so on and so forth, and eventually you would use that ship for firewood, you burn it. Guess what the Romans did? The Romans took the ship apart. They dismantled the ship. And when they dismantled the ship, they saw that this ship was made of standardized parts, and that each section of the ship had a number on it, and it had instructions about where that section went into the whole ship. So this ship was the result of a standardized assembly system. Guess what the Romans did? The Romans then built a fleet of 150 ships. Now hold your breath. Guess how long they took to do that? They took 90 days. 90 days. 3 months. To build a fleet of 150 ships. Built by people who didn't know the first thing about shipbuilding. Who didn't know the first thing about sailing. Right? I mean, they would have sailed something, but they didn't know the first thing about naval battles. They didn't know anything about how strategy works and how supply chains work and how a whole naval battle is fought. And with the 150 ships built in a period of 90 days, the Romans won the war. They defeated the Carthaginians on their element, which was water. Now, this is called learning from pain. You suffer a defeat, and then you take from the person who beat you, the enemy, what is best with them, and you use that to your advantage. You say, this is how you beat me. Now I'm going to see and learn from you how you beat me, and I'm going to use that to beat you. Right? Now believe me, this is easier said than done. And the biggest thing that comes in the way is ego. Is ego. Ego is the biggest and the worst trap that we have. Absolutely, without exception, the worst trap we have is ego. Unwillingness to accept that I am wrong. Unwillingness to accept that somebody else can be better than me. My brothers and sisters, my dear friends, understand this. Until you accept the fact that you are not God's gift to mankind, that the sun does not shine out of a dark place in your body, until you accept that you are like anybody else, which means that you can be as good as anyone else, as powerful, as influential, as beautiful, as you name it, as wealthy as anyone else, provided you learn. Provided you learn. And the biggest and the best teacher that you have and I have is pain. We don't ask for it, but we leverage it when we get it. We don't moan and groan and complain. We use the pain to our advantage. And with that, let me leave you, and I wish you all the very best.